Hi everybody, and welcome to a special edition of Let's Talk About Education with Antonio Corrales. Today we are turning the tables and we are going to interview Dr. Corrales for a special reason, and I'll let Holly tell you about that reason.
Yes, Dr. Corrales has published a book called Always Look 3 Stoplights Ahead, 9 Principles for Establishing Successful Schools. So we would like to interview him today and ask several questions about producing this book.
Thank you so much.
First of all, we're really proud. He is a special mentor to both of us, and so this is a real treat for us, and we hope it will be for you too. So without further ado, we're going to get started with our questions.
Absolutely.
Congratulations on your second
Well,
book. We're so
thank you so
proud of
much.
you. This is book number 2 in how many years?
3 years.
In 3 years, and that's unheard of anywhere. But we see big things ahead. So we had some questions regarding both the overview and the writing process, as well as some of the principles that you addressed. So
Absolutely.
I think, Holly, you had a great question regarding the title. So we should
yes,
kick it off with
absolutely. So tell us how you came up with the title and what inspired you.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for doing this. I mean, you guys are amazing. I would say my best students out there. The creative process of writing, since I started doing this, I literally started writing when I was 12 years old. And, you know, everybody had their own tendencies or talents or whatever. And since I was little, I literally had that thing in me that I wanted to write. And so I was really lucky and fortunate that my parents, especially my dad, always encouraged that in me.
Mm-hmm.
And he was really intellectual, and he introduced me to that world. And so when I was, since then, I had that little seed in me. So I did my doctorate, like you guys are doing it, and so I learned how to write research. But one of the things that I try to do is I try to make these educational books interesting, because one of the things that I used to see in other educational books is that they were kind of boring. In terms of they're always lecturing you,
Yes.
they're always telling you a recipe and this is what you're supposed to do. So I like telling stories because I feel people not only are more engaged when they're reading the stories, but also
Absolutely.
they learn better, tend to remember things better. So this title, the title came from the idea, the notion, the always look to stoplights ahead, always looking, trying to see the big picture. Because I think in leadership, one of the biggest qualities that you can have as a leader is always trying to anticipate what's going to happen in the future. Not that you have a crystal ball,
Right.
but you really one of the things that throughout my career and that I see over and over again in all the educational books and leadership books, like being able to anticipate, being able to
There you go.
calculate what the potential outcome could be.
Yes.
And so the title of the book, trying to make it catchy, trying to make it interesting, basically telling the reader, be aware of what can happen according to your actions. So that's where it comes from.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
And that's that's something that Holly and I were discussing just, I think, earlier today and yesterday, is a lot of times in education we are forced to be so reactive. You know, as a high school principal, you're always waiting for the next thing to happen. But you're turning the tables and saying, no, let's anticipate. Let's arm ourselves with some principles that we can remember and commit to memory so that we can be prepared for the next thing.
Yes.
Instead of waiting and reacting.
Correct. And they always say that the best defense is the offense. So if you take care of the important now, so it doesn't become urgent, basically.
Mm-hmm. So for our viewers and future readers, basically we have several principles regarding leadership. And so some of the questions that we're going to ask are related to that. But the first one that I had to do with something that I think is really interesting, which because of your background in HR and public education, we've discussed this before, but I think people need to know clearly what has been the disconnect there between HR and administration that you, in your first book, talked about, bridging. There was a gap there, but you bridged it really well. Why is there that gap? Or why has there been that gap?
Yeah, that's a really nice point. Yeah, so in the book, what I tried to do is, as I was saying, I developed a story. And again, the story, like any other story from any author, you have some autobiography
Right.
there, but also a lot of fantasy. And so what I try to do is I try to immerse the principles within the story, so it becomes fun, and also it becomes more telling, by applying the principles already to the story.
Right.
So one of the topics that you mentioned is the sometimes the disconnect that there is between human resources and administration, and that's not always the case. I've seen a lot of organizations where they're really synchronized, where you see a lot of connections between what's happening in the different departments. But the human resources is like any other department or small organization within a big organization. If you tend to act in isolation, then that's when bad things start happening.
Right.
And I think one of the main messages that I'm trying to send throughout the book is, it doesn't matter if you're in the operational side of a district or the operational side of a university. At the end of the day, you always have to keep in mind what are your end goals.
Right.
What is it that we're here for? And so for leaders and managers in those positions, in HR or finance, I think it's useful to always having meetings with your people, with your colleagues or your employees, and always remember, what is it that we're here?
The mission.
What is it that, in the end, yes, you're in HR, you're calculating salaries, you're probably calculating benefits, you're probably, looking for new positions. But in the end, what is it that we're here? Well, we're here for students. We're here to serve students. And if our process becomes bureaucratic, for example, if we don't have a hiring process effective enough to provide principals with teachers on time, then the students are going to end up suffering.
Yes.
And if the students suffer, our standardized scores suffer, and if our standardized scores suffer, then our district suffer. So it's kind of the intrinsic message behind it is like, you have to build that bridge, close that gap, because at the end of the day, your department doesn't work isolated. It works in an organization. So that's the
And you're all inspired by the same mission, ideally.
correct. So that's what getting everybody in the same mission, visions, and goals.
Right.
Is essential. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I have a question, because we both aspire to be future writers.
Absolutely. You guys are really good writers, by the way.
Well, thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah.
Thank you. So please share with us, how do you know you have a topic? And then, when do you allocate the time, and what type of environment do you write in? What do you write best in? Because every writer's different.
That is a really interesting question, and it's gonna surprise a lot of people. Well, yeah, because people may think that
You generally surprise a lot of people by Corrales in a lot of things.
that you write. People may think that you write in this really cool office, with a lot
Overlooking the ocean.
Yeah, overlooking the ocean. And really, truly, if you see what I write, it's literally an old sofa, with a little thing where I put my iPad and start writing. So it's not really appealing at all. People
You're
will say,
writing on your iPad? Not even on a desktop computer, on an iPad.
It's just my iPad.
With a
and I've been doing it for
keyboard.
years. Yeah,
Really?
I've been doing it for years, and then it's so no fashion. I don't see the ocean at all. Everything is here, but the idea is that, like anything else. I remember this thinking when I wrote my first book back in the day when I was 20 years old. I wrote a poetry book, and I got an interview, and they asked me, how do you write poetry? Where do you come up with the idea? And really, truly, and the answer sounded a little cheesy, but it's the truth. It's like, I don't feel that I created the poetry. I think that the poetry was out there, and I literally was like a catalyzer to
Absolutely.
put. And so I feel like it's the same, like all of a sudden you get plugged. Now, one thing that I think is important for future writers, and I think this is a really good tip, is that you come up with a skeleton of the book first in your brain. Okay, what is it that I want to do? So I always, like I said, my topics when I'm writing, I always want to tell stories, because I was influenced by other storytellers, other writers, or book writers who taught me in a different way that other authors who were trying to lecture me.
Right.
And so I was always say, okay, what is the skeleton of the book? Okay, I'm gonna have a story about a particular topic, and then I'm gonna have some lessons or principles that hopefully students are gonna be able to get. And so after that, you start, basically writing, developing chapters. But the other thing that people misrepresent is that they think that you write the book in order. Like exactly the final product, people think, oh, this guy wrote
Linear.
this, and it's not like that. You may be in an airport, or you may be in a I don't know, in a line waiting. And sometimes I even write in my iPhone when I'm writing a line, and I come out an idea and start writing in my notes, because then I'm gonna use that in some part of the book. So you don't necessarily have to restrict yourself and okay, I have to write now in chapter 1, or have to write chapter 2. No, you may write in chapter 15 at the beginning of the book.
Gosh, imagine if we did that with our dissertations.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, actually, it's interesting that you say that, because even in the dissertation process, sometimes, and that's what I tell my students sometimes. And I don't know if I told you guys that, but sometimes you write something that is really interesting, that is based on your experience, your opinion, for example, in your specific dissertation topic. But you may not need it in your introduction of your research, but you may end up needing it in your implications. in your
Yes,
chapter
we
5.
are finding that.
Yeah, and so save those documents. So never, my advice to future readers is never destroy anything that you write, because
Right.
you don't know when you're gonna end up using it.
Right.
So that's kind of the creative process, and like I said, it's easier if you put some autobiographic components in
I
the
agree.
book, because you're talking about yourself, or you're talking maybe about somebody that you know, that you were really close to. It helps incorporate that.
No, that emotional connection is a researched one, actually, and it goes back to the idea of oral storytelling, the tradition of storytelling. And so it works. It definitely works for something as personal as education.
Correct.
We're all touched by it. So it does help that the stories anchor us into the principles.
Yeah, well, this story, honestly, I wanted to do it. I was inspired by my grandfather. My grandfather was an immigrant from Hungary who immigrated to Venezuela, not to America. So I kind of took some of the components, but he went to Venezuela after the Second World War. So for him, he had to leave his entire world behind. And
you captured that.
Yeah, so I tried to make it a sort of like a love story, where he literally has to reinvent himself, and experience life here in America. Becoming a successful educator. So that's kind of where I took some of the components to inspire me in this story.
Well, the principles are definitely helpful for anyone who's been in public ed or in higher ed leadership.
Yes,
So we had a question on that alignment, didn't we,
Yes.
Holly?
Yes. So in the book, you address the 9 principles of successful schools. So will this be a segue for a new book?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Honestly, I feel so blessed by the initial reaction of the book. I have heard from different districts and different organizations that it may be a really good tool for especially new teachers, new professors.
Absolutely.
So one of the ideas that had been brought to my attention is kind of developing the book according to specific areas. For example, bilingual education, the 9 principles.
Adapting.
Yeah, for some successful in bilingual education, or in gifted and talent education, or community colleges, or student success. So there's a lot of ideas in there on how to really apply the book, because the 9 principles that we discuss in the books are general inapplicable to almost any organization. But of course, as you get deeper, there are specific principles you may apply in specific areas. And so that's definitely something that
You might do in the future.
yeah, I may be doing in the future. I may take on in the future. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Wonderful.
That's great.
One of the things I think is interesting about you that because you've been our instructor and our chair and our friend and our mentor, we know more about you than most people. A lot of people don't know that you have such a strong business background. And so one of the principles, you talk about curriculum, and you talk about money management, the funding side of it. With your background, it gives you an advantage. Do you feel that in higher ed programs that are, leadership training programs, that we're pushing more towards making those, consolidated efforts towards building future leaders, making sure that they get the business side as much as they get the curriculum instructional side?
Yeah, I think those are really good points, and I appreciate your kind words. And I have been really fortunate that if you look at my career, it has been really unorthodox. I haven't been the prototype career, especially in education. I have been all over the place. And if you look at my, first of all, I'm an immigrant. I have lived in several places in the world. so I have been forced to adapt and learn. So I was fortunate to be in the private sector where I was over 3,000 people, simultaneous people from all the backgrounds, and I had to literally, I was forced to learn about budget pretty quickly. I was fortunate that I had my MBA in Germany, and I was able to learn a lot of tips in how to manage money. But what I tell my fellow educators all the time is that you don't need to be an accountant to be efficient managing money. You just need to know these general concepts to be able to ask the right questions and be aware of what's going on. So, for example, if we're talking about school districts, one of the things that you wanna know is how much money you have in the bank, okay? And so the answer may be really simple. You talk to if you're a superintendent, you're a new superintendent, you ask, okay, how much money do I have in the bank? Then your finance, your assistant superintendent of finance or your executive director of finance may answer, well, we have $10 million. But the following question has to be, how long ago have you reconciled your accounts? Because you and I know that.
How accurate is that? Yeah.
That likely happen in your household. The concept of reconciliation is pretty simple. It's how much money you have paid versus how much money you have left in the bank after all those payments have been executed. And so sometimes they tell you have $10 million, but when you reconcile it, in reality you may have $1 million, you may have $2 million. And in most states, there are laws that obligate school districts to have certain amount of money in the fund balance, which is basically the saving accounts, and happen the same in higher ed. And so, asking those follow-up questions, okay, I have $10 million, but how long ago have you reconciled, and how often are you reconciling accounts?
So more of a top-down perspective of making sure that you know what questions to ask.
Correct, and be aware of the process. The other thing is the budgetary process. Okay, who's making the decision in regards to money? Well, that shouldn't be just one person.
Right.
That shouldn't be, and I'm talking about in any organization, that should be something that is trickled down through every department, through every school, to every grade level, to every stakeholder. So is there a process for that? And if it's not, then you should be at least involved as a leader in the process and be aware of, okay, who's making the decision? Because it's not only unfair to put all the weight in one person, in this case the finance person, but it's also unfair to the students, because at the end of the day, how that person may know what students in a high school, in a career technology program or in a special education program may really need. It's impossible. So basically the message behind that is, you don't need to be an accountant or a finance guru to know the right question. And if you don't know the right question, that's okay. But you have to learn pretty quickly at least the generalities of the process in order to be effective. And that's applicable to any operational side of the education. People think that, okay, I'm an educator and
I'm all instruction.
And I'm all instruction. Well, once you get a leadership position, it doesn't work that way. You have to be aware of, how basic HR processes, basic finance processes.
So thinking of yourself more of a CEO.
That's exactly right, and that's what you are. When you're in a leadership position in education, you literally are that. You're a CEO, you're a chief executive officer, and so as such, you have to have general concept. And it's not okay to trust blindly on somebody because that person is an expert. It's just not okay, and it's not safe for anybody. Yeah.
Thank you. Very good.
Yeah.
Well, I would like to say that I thoroughly enjoyed the book. And maybe Michelle and I differed a little bit, but the romantic stories in there kept me going throughout the book. So
you like that part.
You definitely need to read it.
Well, you do need some of that with your highs and lows in your day-to-day. So it anchored. I agree. It anchored the story really well. Yes,
it did.
What I like about your different perspectives, you're a high school principal, and you come from pre-K to 12th world, and you're a professional higher ed professor, and you come from that world. So for you guys have.
And our questions are so different.
They're so different because of that.
Very reflective of who we are. Yes, absolutely.
Yes, definitely.
They're definitely different, but that's the beauty of this
the
type
applicability
of
the book.
That, you can apply it, and you're right. It's a love story, because I think in the end I'm a romantic person. That's why I wrote poetry. That's what, and so I tried. This book actually was a really fresh project, because it really was developed organically. I wanted to, and like I said, I wanted to put the feelings that I put myself in my grandfather's life when he was leaving his country, and he was leaving his girlfriend, and he was leaving all that, and what was the thinking process. I tried to put myself in. He died many years ago. But I was fortunate to hear a lot about his stories and things like that.
It's a reflective process, and I think that's what writing should be for leaders. I think we all should use it as a tool for reflection. We just talked about that a little while ago.
That's exactly right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, one of the principles discussed building capacity within an organization, and this is an interesting concept for us because we've watched you do it within our own program, right? And we know that you've done it in school districts. And it's very important because it is, I believe it's relationship based. I think you have to be so aware of who the people that you have around you. And you always say things like, I only associate with the best. You're my superstars, you're my rock stars. And I think you do have that quality of being able to be astute enough to know what you have. What are some tips you have for new leaders who are just learning about building capacity? How do they know that they're on the right track? How do they know that their organization is growing from within?
Yeah, I think I learned that pretty quickly from my mentors in my private sector. Basically, one of the things that I learned was that you have to be a big supporter of your team. And if your team grow, then you're gonna grow. So I think one of the first advice that I tell my friends and my students and the people that I advise is that you have to develop some self security, some self-confidence in yourself in order to allow others to grow. I mean, there's everything that I know throughout my positions, and actually that's the way that I was trained. Everything that I know, my people need to know. So there's nothing that I should know about the job that my the people that I supervise shouldn't know. And so I always try to give them opportunities to grow and always encourage them. I think as a leader, you ended up being a life coach. Now, that's a really common terminology nowadays because everybody's a life coach. But really and truly, you really want to put people in positions to make them grow. And one of the basic things, and we have talked about this in class, is that you have to build relationship. And that doesn't happen organically. People think that because of your day-by-day duties, if you don't make an effort to spend some quality time with your people and with your colleagues, with your employees, it's gonna be impossible. So you really have to get to know what is it that they like, what is it that they wanna go when they grow up, and how can you help them? How can you put in the position? Because if they're in a good position, then you're gonna be in a good position. And remember the principle that we always talk about. There's enough evidence, enough research to show that people who are happy tend to perform better.
I believe that.
Yeah, so the school climate and the climate of organization,
culture.
Yeah, the culture is totally connected to performance.
Absolutely.
And so I guess the general concept is, number one, being aware of who you are as an individual. Don't be afraid of allowing others to grow and know more than. Probably a lot of people are gonna know more than you as an individual, and that's totally okay. Because if they perform better, you're gonna perform better.
Right.
And the second thing is establishing relationship, allowing them to tell you what is it that they don't know. So that way you can provide the resources, and I can guarantee you that a lot of those stuff don't cost any money. You may have a lot of resources within your organization.
Building capacity doesn't cost a lot.
Doesn't cost a lot, and it's just putting people in position to learn. In the end.
Awesome, thank you. I think those are good tips.
Yeah.
So what are your aspirations? You have moved quickly through many different aspects, through K through 12 and the college world. So tell us, what are your future aspirations?
That's a nice question. Yeah, one of the things that I would like to do, I always like to excel in life. I'm an overachiever, and as you guys know, and you said it right. I like to associate myself with people who have the same the same mentality. Who wanna, I really wanna leave a legacy. I wanna help people, and I think, and I like excellency. I like to achieve great things, and so one of the things that I've done here in the university level is with the doctoral programs. I've been trying to allow students to see all the possibilities that they have. You know, my goal is to continue touching people. You know, I think I have been really blessed having people like you guys, and being able to write and express myself, and being able to have people who want to listen. I think that's such a blessing. You know, having something to say and having people willing to listen to what you're going to say. I mean, you let that sink in a little bit. You let that digest, and it's such an amazing concept. So what I really want to do is I want to continue helping people. I want to continue following my career in higher education, and want to be able to helping people like you guys achieve your dreams. And so that's
it's
my
exciting. And I think the reason that a book like this, and the first book, and even our program resonates with people is because you're passionate. And I don't want that to be lost to the people that are listening and watching. People will follow people who are happy and passionate and excited and there for a cause. All of us are looking to get behind something good. And I think the energy that you bring is what makes these things more successful. It's not just, oh, I'm publishing, I'm moving up. It's who you are. And so I think future leaders need to remember that who they are in their base, in their soul, counts just as much as what they know and what they can do. That's why, you know, it was an easy thing for us to say, he's our chair, right? us, yeah. And when we both have our stories of how we naturally gravitated towards you, it's because we're both the same. We want to follow something big, and we want to be part of something. We want to leave legacies just like you do. So I think that that's an important leadership lesson, and I think I'd like to read more about leaving a legacy and how important it is, especially in education, in public education, where we see so many tragedies, in higher education where we see the data that's not pushing us in the right direction. There's a lot to be said for the energy and the synergy that is created from a passionate leader.
Well, I really appreciate the beautiful words, and honestly, you guys inspire me. I mean, if it wouldn't be for people like you, I wouldn't be where I am, and I feel like I'm learning constantly from you guys, in every area. You know, Holly being a highly successful high school principal,
Absolutely.
you be a highly successful pre-K to 12 administrator, and now higher ed professional. You know, all those things, you know, filter me, and honestly, when I started these, I remember coming to America many years ago. You know, I was scared because I had this accent, and I was like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? You know, people are gonna be able to understand me, and those are mental barriers that you keep putting yourself in your brain. And I think one of the main things that I try to tell my students, you're gonna have a lot of negative messages coming from your own brain. We tend to be our own worst enemy many times, and so it takes a village to every morning, every day, waking up and change those negative thoughts that are constantly chasing you with positive thoughts. And the best recipe that I have found is taking actions. You know, if you stop thinking too much and start doing more, I think that's the best recipe to succeed.
I think that's great. Holly, did you have any other questions?
No.
I would like to know when do we get our copies? This is great, but I can't take it. When can our readers and your viewers expect to get their hands on these?
Yeah, the book is already on sale, so it's you can buy it in Sleebris.com. You can buy it in Amazon. You can buy it in Barnes and Noble. You can buy it in any bookstore that you want. You have the digital version. You have the paper-based version. And of course, you guys gonna get your copies. But you know, one thing that I will ask all of you is, you guys, you know that I have Facebook. You know, I have Twitter. I have Instagram. I have all that. You know, I will ask you guys to post your comments about the book out there and share
Start
share
that
with
dialogue, absolutely.
yeah, because we wanna spread the word. I wanna hear what you think. You know, from as a reader, and you know, I've been visiting school districts, visiting universities, talking about the book, and I want to know, you know, what you guys have to say. How if the book you taught you in a particular way, like you said about the love story, or you know, the lessons. You know, how the book impacted you in any capacity. That's
Absolutely.
something that I would love to hear. But I really appreciate you guys doing this. I feel honored that you guys wanted to interview me, and I'm definitely looking forward to, you know, see how many things you guys are going to be accomplishing in your careers.
Well, we've got a great example.
Thank
So the book is, again, Always Look 3 Stoplights Ahead, 9 Principles for Establishing Successful Schools by Dr. Antonio Corrales. And we have really enjoyed doing this, and we look forward to seeing more from you in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
you.
Thank you.